Oh my God. Oh, sorry, folks. I was muted that entire time. Sorry about that. That was my fault. So welcome to Studio Brule. And today we're dealing with Big Tech is watching you. Big Tech is become and taken on the role of Big Brother. So as you can see, the world is changing much faster than we even expected. Biden is not even in office yet, and he's already, they're making tyrannical moves, pushing for another impeachment. I don't know what they're afraid of there. They seem to want to make sure that Trump has no possibility of getting in office again. And they seem to want, I think, they want to send a message to any would-be Trumpers that if they think they're going to start to acting against the deep state, they're going to face the same kind of non-stop attacks, personal and professional attacks, blocking in Congress and so on and so forth. So they're sending a big message out there that the left is here. They intend to dominate forever. Have a look at the video that I made, Feminism's Role in a One World Government and What We Can Do About It, if you want to see. This was actually fairly easy to predict. We could predict all of this action and did start predicting all this action as soon as the pandemic started and before. The pandemic, the so-called pandemic, was the biggest sort of indicator of how they were going to dominate totally. So without any further ado, I want to have a look at some of the totalitarian changes that are upon us. Did I mention the video, Feminism, Role in a One World Government? The Biden administration is all about opening the doors and bringing in the one world government. The U.S., as I mentioned in that video, was the last thing standing between a one world government, the globalists and their one world government and separation of states, or the nation state system that we have now. Biden will facilitate that. He will open the doors. The reason the world could not go forward with a one world government without the U.S.'s cooperation is because the U.S. has by far the strongest military in the world and the strongest economy. China is not far off economically, but China is not a military force like the U.S. is. There's a graphic available online that will show you that the U.S. Navy alone has 7 times the Navy force of all the other nations of the world combined. The U.S. military is slated in the future, once the one world government system is all set up and all the checks and balances, all the connections are formed, they will become the world police. So the U.S. standing under Trump, standing in the way of one world government, would not go forward, because the U.S.'s military force is overwhelmingly powerful. This is why the leftists were so against Trump all along. They knew that Trump would block any movements towards a one world government, and that is their passion, that is their overriding goal, to bring the world under one world government with their socialist goals to be implemented as a result. Sorry about the slight interruption there. Let's get on with some of the stuff that I wanted to talk about today. I tweeted this out just 2 days ago. I'll just read it out for you in case you haven't read it here. The left announced their Great Reset plan at World Economic Forum months ago. They will implement that plan with gusto. That will mean tax increases and wealth transfer to the third world as planned. The tax increases, by the way, will be on the Western world. They explicitly stated this in some of their pronouncements around the Great Reset, that the Western world will have to take a decrease in standard of living. Now, as we'll see shortly, The elite have been investing in the third world for actually quite a long time, but they have huge investments there. So I claim here, I don't know if they own most of the third world, but let's face it, the elite, if they don't own it now, they can own it when they want to own it. They can buy up everything there. So the elite owns, and this is a bit of exaggerated rhetoric, but I think the idea applies. The elite own most of the third world. So this is a direct transfer from taxpayers in the Western world to the elite. It is a global coup. Let's use the example here of the Haitian earthquake of, I think it was 2010. That Haitian earthquake, there was a huge amount of global effort around relief for them. And the Clinton Foundation was, I think, in charge of about, now I'm just pulling a number out, it's the only number I can think of right now. I think it was in the range of $100 million of relief. And to this day, my understanding is only about 4 small houses were built in Haiti to help the Haitians. The rest of that $100 million, which was under the control of a nephew, I believe, of the Clintons in Haiti, that rest of that $100 million has never been seen. This was a transfer to the Clintons. The situation with taxing the Western people of the Western world and transferring it so-called to help the third world, it is never going to help the third world people. Even though it may help the third world countries' economies, it will never, none of that help will ever reach the third world people. The Western elite, or the elite of the world, will own everything in those countries, and that wealth transfer will go to the assets, to help the assets that they already own. So this is the second global coup by the elite, the first being the pandemic, because that doubled and more the wealth of the already extraordinarily wealthy. What is going on today is an absolute, complete coup, takeover of the entire world by the super wealthy elite. So there was a comment up here I wanted to just highlight. Someone mentioned something in Europe. I think Michael Keller here. Let's just mention this comment. The U.S. military is already considered the world police because since Clinton, that's the way the U.S. acts in the world. That is true. That is a good point. But it will be official. Now, when in the video I talked about feminism's role in a one world government and what we can do about it, I mentioned that and this is important, in a one world government, there is no restraining force of other countries. The one thing that keeps countries of the world sort of in check is that there's an international community that will sanction and punish countries that get way out of line, whether with human rights abuses or various things. It's not a perfect system. Obviously, it doesn't work in its entirety, but it is better than nothing. With a one world government, who will keep the one world government in line? There will be no restraining force. This will absolutely and with absolute certainty go to absolute corruption of power. Absolute power means absolute corruption, and a one world government leaders will have absolute power, or at least the wealthy who will ultimately control that one world government will have absolute power in the world. Now, where in today's world, I'm just repeating some of the stuff out of the video, not a lot, it's almost an hour's video, 45 minutes or something like that. But in today's world, a political dissident, somebody whose life is at risk merely for their ideas or the truths that they say or their power of them to reveal the authorities as they are. These kinds of political dissidents have other countries to go seek asylum in. They can go and their life will be protected in friendly countries that offer asylum. And there are lots of them today. I think in the video I mentioned is something like 50,000 asylum seekers per year, admitted per year in the U.S. alone, fleeing totalitarian regimes who put their lives at risk. Those are the ones who are accepted into the U.S. So this is a huge issue. In a one world government, where will a political dissident go? There is nothing. It's the end. It is tyranny in its totalitarian in its absolute nature. So this is a very, very bad turn of events. In that video I mentioned that a Trump re-election would not end this process. The globalists are going to seek the one world government forever. But it would have given us another 4 years to prepare for this. Now, now we don't have 4 years. Look how fast they are changing things in the U.S. now. Let's read on here to the next bit. Here is an indication, a couple of slides here or a couple of screens, I'm going to show you some of the wealth that is already owned by and what the super wealthy are already doing in the third world. Amazon's in 2016, Amazon's Jeff Bezos pledged that Amazon would up its planned direct investment in India from $3 billion to $5 billion. Amazon has already built 21 fulfillment centers and has employed large numbers of Indians in positions ranging from courier to research and developer. According to Bezos, India is Amazon's fastest growing market. Now, these World Economic Forum's Great Reset, which includes wealth transfer from you and me and every working normal person in the West via our taxes, is going to go in part to companies like Amazon in India and other developing countries. But there's more. There's more. And they have said straight out that the Great Reset will mean that people of the Western world standard of living will go down. Jeff Bezos, this is from November 19th. That last one, if you notice, that last slide was from 2016. Okay, they've been preparing for this for a long time. Jeff Bezos became the largest big tech name to invest in an African finance, I think that is, startup. November 19th, Bezos investing heavily in an African startup. Why do you think that they are these rich people are encouraging wealth transfer from Western worlds to third world countries? Because that wealth transfer, folks, let's be very clear about this. This wealth transfer that the World Economic Forum, which is run by people like Bezos, that is directly to go to people like Bezos. This is another financial coup. I think we need to really understand this. These people, and I make this point in the video, these people don't see the rest of the regular people of the world as human beings. They are human resources to them. They are cattle. We, to them, are nothing but livestock to be used. They, throughout history, the megalomaniacal leaders of the world, the most powerful, have always sought out a work-slave force, a slave workforce. This is what it's all about. Undermining the quality of life for people in the West, transferring. They're going to sell this to the enormous numbers of sheep in the West. So in some sense, it's our fault, but because we buy this line of reasoning from them, they're going to sell this as if we're helping the poor and raise the quality of life of the poor in third world countries. It is not. Only as if the extent that it does, it will only be incidentally. This is all about transferring control of all the resources through companies like Bezos' African finance tech startup. And that they're using your and my tax money to spread and increase their control of everything in the world. So they're buying up third world countries. Just acknowledge Oklahoma Bachelor. Thank you so much for supporting Studio Brule. Learn to live like a minimalist monk. Absolutely, I have. I used to have a large house in Kingston with a 2-car garage and filled with stuff. I sold everything. In the house, I have now one storage room that I rent with some valuable stuff I still want to keep. I sold the house, I sold the car, and now I'm in the Dominican Republic. I came here with, I think, at first with 3 suitcases full of stuff, and that's it. I've acquired a few things for comfort over the last few years. But I agree, to the extent that you can, become a minimalist monk. The future is complicated for us regular people because the pressure is on to turn us into work slaves. So let's move forward to the next one here. This one, let's read from the top here. Over the past 5 years, high-profile visits to African tech ecosystems by Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg, Twitter's Jack Dorsey, and Google's Sundar Pichai, and Alibaba founder Jack Ma have been signposts as marks of validation. Jeff Bezos, CEO of Amazon and the world's richest man, can be added to the list of global tech leaders drawn to the promise of African technology startups. They are drawn to the promise of taking those wealth transfers as planned by the World Economic Forum and building their businesses on the tax dollars of Western people. These group of names here are the megalomaniacs who are seizing control of the entire world. Let's move on a little bit here. Chipper cash, a cross-border. By the way, all of the links are in the description of the video. You can read all these articles for yourself. Some of them I highly recommend, especially at the end. We're going to talk about an article by Rex Murphy in Canada. If you don't know Rex Murphy, you should. He is one of the most insightful, brilliant writers of what's going on in our world today. He's absolutely brilliant. And we're going to go in some detail into the article at the end, and it's really worth reading that entire article. So let me get back to the top here. I'll take a little sip of coffee. Chipper Cash, a cross-border peer-to-peer payment service, has raised $30 million in a Series B funding round led by Ribbit Capital with participation from Bezos Expeditions, Jeff Bezos' personal venture capital fund. Bezos intends to again multiply his wealth through this World Economic Forum plan, of which he is one of the architects. It's the first investment in an African startup for Bezos' fund, which has also backed global tech brands including Uber, Twitter, and Airbnb. That's Bezos' personal fund. Personal, not his Amazon holdings and whatnot. Reading from the top. Bezos' investment in Chipper Cash sees him join a list of high-profile individuals that have bet on an African tech startup. Former U.S. Vice President Al Gore, tennis Grand Slam champion Serena Williams, as well as Zuckerberg and the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, whatever, have all invested in Andela, a developer outsourcing firm that connects African software engineers to global clients. Look what's going on here, folks. Look what's going on. This is going on while the World Economic Forum is telling all the first world governments that they have to increase the taxes on U.S. and Canadian and Western citizens and transfer that money to these very countries and these very companies owned by the same people who created and architect the World Economic Forum plan. A stronger coup, starting from the pandemic to now, and this is the second phase of their coup through the World Economic Forum, which is why they wanted Trump out of the way, why they stole the election, why they are acting so fast to shut Trump's voice and to shut down everybody who supported Trump. This is so important. They want to make sure that almost nobody finds out what's going on until it's too late. And I tell you, you'll see in my video, I'm a little bit pessimistic about this. We're seeing, at the same time as they're locking out all of Trump's supporters, everything that they're going to try and undo everything that Trump did. They're opening up the border, pushing for globalism. At the same time that they're doing all this, they're pushing forward this new takeover of the world. and they're erasing history, exactly as Orwell said in 1984. They're deleting people, they're deleting content on the internet. We are going into what I'm starting to call, I'm going to write it in the comments here, I'm starting to call this, you'll see here, the beginning of, oops, I want to make sure I get this written right in here. I think I'd like you, if you feel so, share this hashtag. But we are entering in what I'm calling the 1,000 years of darkness. It's the 1,000 years of darkness. When they get all of this set up, the one world government, and they've transferred the funds, and they've shrunk the Western economy, they've destroyed the middle class, they've created an enormous global class of work slaves. This will be very, very difficult to end, to unseat or combat. It will last a very long time. Now, obviously, I don't know 1,000 years. I use 1,000 years because this is a kind of a traditional way to indicate that you mean a very long time. So 1,000 years of darkness. This is the period we're just entering now. And it's already started. They're already changing history. They're getting rid of historical monuments. They're getting rid of rewriting history. Look at the 1619 project, trying to rewrite the origin story for the U.S. itself. This has just barely started. With Biden-Harris, the globalists in power, there will be no opposing voice for these people. So prepare. What the model I'm thinking of now, and I've been thinking about this for a couple of years, is that we're looking at the need to create monk-like monasteries where the truth about our time and history needs to be stored offline, not accessible to the internet. And I don't know how, I mean, this is a wild idea, but I think that's the kind of thing we need. In history in the past, there have been times when communities had to retreat from society altogether into some monk-like monastery with their intellectual heritage in hand and preserve it for future generations. I believe the Catholic Church had to do that as well. And that's the kind of age we're entering into now. The majority of people will laugh at what I'm saying. I fully accept that now I'm characterized and will be characterized as a conspiracy theorist. Unfortunately for my critics, what I've been saying for the last, well, since we started the Studio Brûlée and the Flamingo File and going throughout the pandemic is coming true. Have a look at the video. I wrote the script for that video, feminism's role in the one world government and what we can do about it. I wrote that script back in the spring or early summer of 2020, and I preserved it because I presented it at the 21 Convention Conference in Florida, just in October of this year, last year. So read it, or rather watch the video if you want more information on this stuff. Let's move forward here. For Bezos, this is a tiny investment relative to his recent outlays. This month, he became the world's biggest donor to climate activism with $10 billion Earth Fund backing climate change-related causes and groups. Well, you know what that is. The climate change was the first round of fear-mongering that the left used in order to justify their push for a one-world government. As we know, the climate change fear-mongering didn't scare people enough to motivate them to support the changes that the elitists want globally. But the pandemic did. It worked in spades. Scared the entire world needlessly, but scared the entire world and got everybody worried about dying from this coronavirus, while they, behind the scenes, created their Great Reset, pushed it forward, and in their Great Reset, they even used climate change as one of the excuses for needing a Great Reset. And these same cast of characters who are pushing the World Economic Forum's Great Reset are the ones who are going to profit from it. Bezos stands to be he already is one of the most powerful people in the world, but he stands to be one of the world's first true emperors, owning everything. Read this last bit with me. But this could signal Bezos going a step further beyond dipping his toes in the waters in Africa's fast-growing tech hubs. Read that again, Africa's fast-growing tech hubs. Fast-growing. That is why they are all lobbying for high taxes in the West and send the money to third world countries where they already own the businesses there. This coup is incredible. It's brilliant, but it's incredible and it's very dangerous, and it signals we really need to open our eyes to the amazing power that these group of people have. This is unprecedented. This group of elites is far more powerful than the government of the United States. They installed their puppet Biden-Harris. And thanks to Oklahoma Bachelor for your generous support of Studio Brûlé. We really need support here. Most of our funding sources have now been obliterated by the big tech companies. Oklahoma Bachelor says lost texts of Jesus in India are in monasteries. There you go. And some of them have been recovered lately. Isn't it the Dead Sea Scrolls? Or that may be a different thing going on there. Can't claim to know that much detail. But I'm fairly sure that this kind of retreating with your intellectual heritage has happened many times in the past as totalitarian regimes seek to destroy everybody in order to secure their power over the people. Let's move forward. Bill Gates has big scientific hopes for 2021. Here's why. And this is in Wealth Reporter in a Business Magazine, printed on December 22nd. The coronavirus pandemic, the billionaire and philanthropist writes, has killed 1.6 million people worldwide while infecting 73 million and has caused trillions in economic damage. So let's take this first sentence apart. This is absolute insanity. These are part and parcel. This author here is buying right into the exaggerated stats and the lies of this whole pandemic. It's very revealing that they do it right away. Here, killing 1.6 million people. We fully know, with the admission of the CDC, that 96% of the dead in the US at least had other comorbidities which most likely killed them, not the coronavirus. But because they had the coronavirus too, they are included in this 1.6 million. And the infection rate, as we discussed some weeks ago, is being determined by the PCR test, which does not tell you whether you are currently infected with the coronavirus. It only tells you that you might have that you've been, and there's errors. That test, as Elon Musk pointed out, is showing a 50% error rate. So you might as well toss a coin with that test. But they are using that test to inflate the caseload rates so that they can keep, as I've said many times in the past, the purpose of inflating all these numbers is that they have to keep justifying the state of emergency. This is a key point. If they can't justify the state of emergency, they can't lock you up, they can't destroy the economies in the West, they can't convince people to accept the Great Reset, they can't convince people to accept the high taxes and the transfer of wealth to the third world countries. Everything depends upon the mainstream media selling to the public that we are in a global emergency. And to sell it, they have to make the numbers look bad. And that's why the CDC orders every hospital to list as a cause of death COVID-19 when it is extraordinarily unlikely that it had anything to do with a person's death. There was even a motorcycle accident in Florida, as you know, where they declared his cause of death COVID-19. And they only changed it much later because they got caught. They didn't go back and change all the other stats that they had of the similar kind that they had in there. So this is all about taking emergency totalitarian power in order to push forward this great reset, which is going to again, 2020 and 2021 and 2022 will see the elite of the world's wealth double again for these very reasons. It's the question from Oklahoma Bachelor here. Can I get a Ghanaian wife? Taxes pay for her anyways. You probably can if you want to live in Ghana, and it might be nice there. I've heard it is. You have to go over there, have a look. I do encourage people to leave the West, especially men. The West has nothing left to offer men. Even the good jobs opportunities are starting to drip away. They're going to go to these African countries and to India and China. I don't know about China so much for good jobs, but they're going to be stripping away a lot of the good jobs. With the high tax rates and the destruction of the economy, the future is not looking good for the West, especially under a one-world government. So do think about any way you can to leave the West as a man, because even before this started, as a man, we are hated. Feminism has dominated the West for 50 years. It is now acceptable publicly to hate, shame, blame white men for anything, and there's no pushback about it, except amongst our small community. So, let's carry on with this here. The killings of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, rampant wildfires, and a presidential election unlike any other contributed to upheaval. Oh, I forgot to mention here, 73 million infected, okay, caused trillions in economic damage. Here is an enormous lie they keep repeating, and these people know better. This was I think in a business magazine. They know darn well that no virus has ever damaged an economy, okay? This virus is not damaging any economy. It is all the damage to our economy is inflicted by the leaders' decisions to lock people up. And they used the emergency powers that they grabbed, sold to the people by the mainstream media. The virus has not caused $1 of economic damage. The decisions by the elite to shut down the economies caused every single dollar of economic damage. This kind of perpetuating the lie here is a flashing bright sign that this person is a lying cheat, selling the Great Reset and selling all the nonsense of the elite to us through their article. I wanted to point that out in no uncertain terms. Here they're going to say the killings of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, as if these were unavoidable tragedies. No, they weren't. Both of these people were criminals. Both of them were resisting arrest. Now, George Floyd neither of them deserved to die, but the fact is they're not heroes. They never will be heroes. They were sold to us in order to inflate the power of BLM, transfer money to the Democratic Party, and create riots in the streets. The rampant wildfires, well, that's just an act of nature, an act of God, if you will. But the presidential election, unlike any other, that was unlike any other for sure. It was stolen. It's clearly stolen. They were setting up for this for over a year to steal this, maybe for 4 years. The Democrats said outright before Trump was even inaugurated into office, they said they were going to get rid of him one way or another, whatever it takes, and nothing was off the table. Nothing was off. They truly mean that when they say that. Democrats do not hold themselves, lefties, but the Democrats are fully lefty socialists. They do not hold themselves to any standards, any rules. Everything is an option to the lefties. And they stole this election just to put Biden and Harris in power. Of course, Harris is their true intended president. She's a proven track record of ruthless lying, destruction of people's lives with no conscience whatsoever. And she will be the president of the U.S. probably a lot sooner than you think. When you watch Biden, he can't even read a telemonitor. He's lost his mind so far. they'll be getting Biden out of there pretty darn soon, and Harris will be popped right in there just as planned. I gotta hand it to them. They have a lot of power, but they executed their plan of theft of the world with great skill. And even though we know what's going on in their plan, we can't seem to do anything about it. At least not yet. We should prepare, though. Under no uncertain terms, you really need to prepare for this coming changes in the world. It's going to be coming in my lifetime. I think, personally, by the end of 2021, the world will be almost unrecognizable to where it is today. You know, as evidence to the concern that people have is that Bitcoin has taken off like a rocket. It hit over $40,000 US. In February, March of last year, Bitcoin was sitting, I think, around, it had dropped a bit to around $6,000 or $7,000 US, although longer term it was floating around 10,000, but it has gone up roughly from its averages about 400% because people are worried, at least thinking people are worried. They're not worried about the pandemic. They're not worried about these other concerns of, not the pandemic anyways. They're not worried so much about the vaccine and all the rest of that. They're worried about the absolute takeover of the world, the unpersoning that's going on in businesses, shopping like locations like Amazon, banks, online social media places. So people are grabbing Bitcoin as a kind of a protection, a hedge against all these problems. And here they're saying all of that contributed to the upheaval across the country. It didn't, actually. All of these have a common origin. All of these things except the wildfires. But these killings of George and how Floyd and Taylor, how they were used by the left, and then the stealing of the election, they all have the lefties behind them pushing this stuff. I think I've got, this is locked up here. Here we go. Now this is, did I get this out of order? Okay. Between 5 and 10 billion doses of the vaccine will be needed, depending on whether vaccines require 1 or 2 doses for full efficacy. For context, Gates says, I didn't capture that, but that tells you they've said this, they want to vaccinate everybody in the world. 5 to 10 billion doses is to vaccinate the entire world. Imagine how much money that means for Bill Gates. And you can then see why Bill Gates is pushing for lockdowns and lockdowns until everybody is vaccinated. These people, we have to get this through our heads, and we have to explain to our neighbors and we have to explain to our fellow citizens that these people never act in an altruistic way. Never, ever. Not 1 microsecond of 1 day in their lives is devoted to altruistic thinking. These people think about power, strategy, and control. Power, strategy, and control. They aren't even really truly concerned about their net wealth, other than to the extent that it gives them power and control of the world. And their strategy, they always think strategically. And this is executed with brilliant strategy through all of these elites. These are smart people, and their aim is absolute total control of the world. Let me acknowledge Sean Tower here. Thank you so much for your generous donation, Sean. Sean says, I am glad to see other Canadians know what a power grab and sham COVID and American election are. I am surrounded by idiots in the Atlantic Canada. Well, yeah, it's not just Atlantic Canada. There's no place in Canada you can go where you can find a sizable group of people who see what's going on in the world. Canadians are amongst the most naive. If we look at the Lord of the Rings trilogy, the Canadians are the hobbits. They have no idea what's going on outside the Shire, and they're cynical about everything. And all the people trying to protect them outside of the Shire, there's no concern, no knowledge. Canadians are the hobbits of the world today, I'm afraid. Maybe that will change. Maybe that will change. But in part, Canadians became that way because we always had the U.S. to the south protecting us. Canadians never had to worry about other countries invading us. And we never had to truly put up a strong force of our own at our borders. You know, the U.S. has wrapped an umbrella around Canadians, and the Canadian response is to be critical of the U.S., as if the U.S. going about in the world with their business was somehow beneath us. It is not. The U.S. is the single most important factor for the Canadians' quality of life to this day. And now it will be the most significant factor to the destruction of that quality of life for the entire Western world, unfortunately, because Biden, Harris are globalists. They have one goal. The Biden-Harris administration has one goal, and that's to open the U.S. up to create a one-world government and transfer power to that one-world government. And all these elitists, they will all be at the top of the world controlling everything. Trudeau wants a seat at that. That's why Trudeau is sending so much money and support to these globalist organizations. So here it is, Bill Gates saying he wants to sell 10 billion doses. I don't know how much profit he makes off each dose, but it's probably in the range of $30, $40 per dose. Bill Gates going to multiply his wealth again. And don't forget, these vaccines, there will be a new one every year for this coronavirus. They're already selling the public on fear of a second version of the coronavirus. This is never going to stop. And I'll tell you this too. Even if they can't sell another emergency virus to the world, they will find other emergencies to exaggerate in order to justify emergency powers amongst the governing officials of the world, who will be acting on the orders from the elite. They will do this until they've clamped the whole world down and secured all of the connections they need for a full-scale one-world government. And here is a Mario. I'm Canadian too, in Quebec, and almost everybody around me has become a scared sheep, ready to surrender these globalists. It's true. Trudeau is pushing it. Trudeau is one of the most cheerleading globalists in the world today. Trudeau, who said years ago that he admires China's basic dictatorship. And we can see he's patterning his own leadership based on that dictatorship. Now, speaking from Quebec, I think you just mentioned in there, Mario, that you're from Quebec. Quebec has gone through horrible lockdowns. In Montreal, they had police going through the night with sirens even and lights flashing, enforcing an absolute lockdown in Quebec in a military style. All of this for a virus that's almost killed very, very few people in Canada. In fact, somebody did an analysis of the studies in Canada. Something like over 90% or 98% of the deaths from coronavirus happened in old age homes, where the government has locked in the old people. They're not allowing anybody out of those homes, and that's where all the deaths are happening. Across Canada, with all this lockdowns going on, all the justifications, outside of the old age homes, there's something like 60 deaths from coronavirus out of 33 million people. Every single other death from the coronavirus has happened in the old age facilities, which have been locked down. My mother is in one of those in Canada. They don't let them out, and you can't go in. They locked them in and left them to die. And for this, they are locking down all of the country. Imagine somebody years ago saying that your government was going to lock you in your home, destroy your small business, destroy the economy for 60 deaths across the country. 60. That's a tiny, tiny fraction. The only thing that makes sense about it is that this is all about grasping emergency powers by any means possible, using the mainstream media to sell it to the public, and then destroying the economy en route to a one world government. So let's move forward here. I do have a number of other slides to hit on. In order for COVID-19 vaccine manufacturing to ramp up without sacrificing the other routine shots that Gates is already selling, those other flu vaccines, Gates writes that his foundation is connecting vaccine companies in wealthy countries, get this, with high volume producers in developing countries in what are called second source agreements. Again, here's the key term here, folks. This is coming up over and over and over again. The elite have invested already in developing countries. And it is these same elites, I know I'm repeating myself, but this is such an important thing that's going on. It's these same elites who are the architects of the World Economic Forum's plan for the Great Reset, which includes higher taxation on Western workers, citizens, and transfer of that wealth to these very developing countries, basically owned by those same elites. This is taxation of the middle class in the West and sending the money to the global elites, not the developing world. It's never been about helping the developing world. It's about doubling and tripling and multiplying the wealth and power of the elites, who are the architects of the plan. It's a coup. It's a global coup. Let's read on. Bill Gates is funding vaccines, he says, this is so laughable, quote, because we're passionate about saving lives and making sure all children have a chance to grow into adulthood. This is so laughable. But what's even worse than the fact that Bill Gates is writing it is that I'll guarantee you that 90% of the people in the Western world believe Gates. They do. You and I and the folks here who are critical and skeptical and looking into this stuff are a very small minority of the people of the world. That's just a reality. Let's read on. And it is those sheep who believe it, who are their base, that will force this whole plan, helps to force this whole plan forward. Let's read on. We feel a responsibility to give our wealth back to society. Oh my God. And we believe that no outlet for our giving returns more value to the world. This is so nauseating. This is so nauseating. He has the nerve to say that as they plan domination of the world. I suppose we should expect it. I think every dystopian sci-fi novel story has included these syrupy, seductive leaders convincing the people that they are all about helping the people. They're all about helping the people. Oh, for crying out loud. This is why we're so vulnerable. The people believe this stuff. The overwhelming majority of people. And it's built into our DNA in a sense. We're social animals. We always want to be part of a group. And if part of that group means believing that the leaders of that group are after our best interest, that's a necessary function of it. So we're suckers. But look, we have to wake up. We have to wake up and know that we are being suckered. We are just being driven into being work slaves. And I'll pause here and acknowledge Philarator. Thank you so much for your donation to Studio Brûlé, Philarator, and your support. I have to go, Steve. I just wanted to say keep up the great work. Thank you so much for your encouragement and support. We really need it here at Studio Brûlé. Whoopsie, I got that off of there. Okay, so let's carry on. I don't think we have that many slides left, and I do want to get to Rex Murphy's brilliant article. Okay, Gates wraps up with a different yet significant scientific challenge. Climate change. Every last one of these elitists are banking on the fake emergency of the pandemic and the fake emergency of climate change. Both items are to ramp up fear in order to convince the public to support their great reset and the creation of the one world government. As they've been saying since the very beginning of the climate fear-mongering, is that the only way to address climate change is through a one world government, in some words or other, because the climate does not respect national borders, and the pandemic does not respect national borders. This is always their argument. This is always the emergencies they seek to inflate in order to justify their goal, and their goal ultimately is their control of the world. They want to be the first true emperors of Earth. This is all, I make this case much more detailed and how it's going to come about in the video that I mentioned earlier, Feminism's Role in a One World Government and what we can do about it. Feminism plays an enormous role in this, which I haven't touched on in this video. But I detail exactly what that role is and why in that video, if you're interested. He's releasing, Bill Gates is releasing a book this February on the subject titled, How to Avoid a Climate Disaster, more fear-mongering, in which he shares 15 years of learning from funding studies on the phenomena. So Bill Gates has been funding climate change studies. And he's been in part of that same environment. Why would a guy all invested up in vaccines and vaccine production also be worried about funding climate change? If you think it's about saving the world, no, it's just not. I know nobody here believes that. Now, I'm not even saying that climate change isn't real. I'm not saying that the virus isn't real. We have a real virus. And we have a real climate change. Human activity actually is significant enough to claim to change the climate. But here's the clinker. The models do not show the apocalypse that these people are saying. The model goes from, the majority of the model predicts, not really much change to human life on Earth at all from the climate change. And the same with the pandemic. If we had not destroyed, this would have been the approach to the pandemic that should have been from the beginning, that I talked about in the beginning. We should have kept the economy thriving and alive with the young people not at risk, anybody under 60 or 50 or whatever, take your pick, continuing to keep the economy thriving, generating the tax dollars needed to address the issue, and the issue to be addressed was protecting those vulnerable people. Imagine the hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars that the world would have had at its disposal to put towards protecting those at risk who are the over 60 and those with other significant health problems. We could have protected the majority of those people. We could have doubled or 10 times the staff in each facility where old people live and hospitals, because we would have kept the economy alive by allowing people who are not at risk, their risk to young healthy people is less than the risk of slipping in the bathtub and hitting your head. That's the reality of this coronavirus. But anyways, I'm getting off on an angle here. And the same thing with the climate change. Climate change is happening, but the likelihood of this ever causing a problem to humans on Earth is very near zero. And yet, they've been arguing to completely revamp the economies of the entire world. Why? Because that puts them in control. Their plan has them in control as emperors. Let's see what Michael Keller is saying. In Germany, they've closed 20 hospitals with 6,000 beds in 2020, while complaining having too few hospitals in the pandemic. Yeah, we saw that in the US as well, and in Canada. Emergency hospitals opened up and not one patient to treat. See this over and over again. Let's move forward here. Gates appears to see incoming Biden administration as more focused on climate change. Of course he is. Climate change is all about one world government. And writing that the US is poised to resume a leading role in reducing global greenhouse gas emissions next year. And you taxpayers are going to pay through the nose for this. And he adds, an upcoming November 2021 United Nations meeting will bring together world leaders to discuss climate change for the first time since the Paris Summit in 2015. Yep, the one world government. The one world government is always going to need to have the mainstream media create emergencies to keep the public distracted and attuned and in fear. I'll tell you this, and you know this, there's never going to be a time when the elite and the one world government people of the world are going to say, well, basically the world is good and peaceful and there's not a whole lot to fear. It's just regular everyday life. Enjoy yourself. That day is never going to come. Never. They will always be whipping up hysteria over some fear or another that they can control. Reading forward. Did I read that whole thing there? Yeah. So reading forward here. I see promise in the next 12 months. Sure he does. He's going to become extremely rich, even richer than he is. Gates writes, it might not be enormous, but it will be a noticeable, measurable step forward for the world and an improvement on 2020 for the world. When people like Gates say for the world, they really mean for my world because I am an emperor. I am at the top. Let's read on here. Here, as I was referring to, the unpersoning that's accelerating at an enormous pace, and it accounts for the growth of places like Gab and Parler, which has now been taken offline because Amazon's part of the crushing force of the elite. Let's read this tweet here that I captured. RBC Royal Bank shut down all our personal and corporate accounts in Canada a couple of months ago over our views, our quote, views inconsistent with Canadian values such as diversity and inclusion. So there you go. SJW wokeness is a criteria for being able to use the Royal Bank of Canada. This is coming from this fellow here. I think he's a Norwegian, but I can't remember. I only know him through Twitter. Here from the top, the tyrannical left clampdown will continue. This is one of my tweets from a couple days ago. Will continue to escalate. Don't keep cash in a PayPal account. The banks will be next. And obviously the banks have already gotten started. This is one of the reasons that Bitcoin is taking off like a rocket. There's no telling how deep the unpersoning will go or how fast. I think about this a lot because I have been a vocal critic of all of this that's going on. So I don't know, I think the one thing that saves me so far is that I'm a really small fish in this field, and they are really dealing with the big fish right now. Those big voices who are critical of the elite, the leftists, the globalists, the Democrats, the one world government people. But when they deal with them, they're not going to stop. They're going to, like every other totalitarian regime, they're going to go down their list to the smaller and smaller fish. I don't know where I would be on that list, but being a vocal critic puts me on that list. I'm pretty sure of that. So that would, if they get around to that eventually it'll be the banks too. I don't know what I'm going to do about it, but I'll have to admit that I have Bitcoin. And I have Bitcoin, I keep it, I've had it for a long time. I keep it for that very reason. Because the banks control too much of this world. And if they decide you're going to be unpersoned, think about how you're going to go about your life where you can't get a bank account or a credit card. How this is going to, like, doesn't matter who you are. The idea of functioning in society at all without banking and credit card access is really, really hard. You'll have to be basically a monk living in the woods, hunting with your rifle, and how are you going to buy bullets when they're all done? You're not going to have access to banking and credit cards or money or anything like that. No. Yeah, everybody should have some amount of Bitcoin. That's my view. And let me see what Sean Tower has to say. Yes, everything today is a platform, even our cultural institutions. It is true. And Rex Murphy is going to touch on this shortly. We're going to deal with his article. Rex Murphy, if you're not subscribed to him on Twitter or anywhere else he is. So let's finish up this one here. There's no telling how deep or fast. And here's Michael Tracy saying, anyone else find it odd that payment processors like PayPal and Cash App are investigating the political views of users and banning them? Folks, do you have any idea how dangerous this is to everybody in the world? The Chinese have a social credit system. And if you don't have social credit, you don't have any capacity to survive in their culture. I think it's social credit, but anyways, have a look at that term if you're interested. Here, Bill Tufts. I'm going to tell you who Bill Tufts is in a minute, I think it is. Oh, I know, this is different. People's Reset. Prepare your travel papers. It is expected that Gestapo checkpoints will be set up on major roads across Ontario starting later today or tomorrow. This was, I think, quoted out 2 days ago. They're ramping up these lockdowns like we've never seen before. And all of this for 60 deaths, roughly, across the entire country of Canada. 60 deaths. In Ontario, I think there's only 1 or 2 deaths outside of the province of Ontario. 1 or 2 deaths outside of the old age facilities. And they're locking down the entire province. Alan West. It is of grave concern to me that 4 generations of my family fought to preserve individual constitutional liberties like freedom of speech, yet technocratic secular fascists decided to end them for some Americans. The ruthless nature of the left is on full display and undebatable today. Tweeted 2 days ago. Here's Alan West. So you know who he is. He's chairman of the Republican Party of Texas, former Florida rep, retired Army Lieutenant Colonel. He's got almost 1 million followers on Twitter. And you can bet that these elitists have his name on their list. He's critical, and so his name will be on their list. Here, Steph Basil says, replying to Alan West, and this is really, I'm going to go through a few of these very quickly. This is what's disturbing to me, okay, folks? This part is very disturbing. It shows the number of people who are cheerleading, who are celebrating the removal of people, the unpersoning, the elimination of freedom of speech. And it's showing just how ignorant these people are of the importance of these big tech companies in our public square today. These people, the majority, I have to say, it is the overwhelming majority of Western citizens have no idea of what's truly the power of what's going on. And they're celebrating the censorship. They're celebrating it. Let's have a look at these tweets. It's unbelievable. It's of grave concern to me that you think inciting terrorists to attack government officials falls under free speech. That, by the way, was a planned false flag operation, specifically designed to justify the impeachment of Trump, the second impeachment of Trump, and to scaremonger the world and to bring in all of this unpersoning. Let's read this one. Thank goodness we are a free country where private companies still have choices and are not forced to publish government propaganda. Publish government propaganda? Don't know where this person's talking about. They're shutting down private citizens from participating in the public square. And just wait for a moment as we go over Rex Murphy's article on this, and he'll explain exactly why these sheep, these hordes of millions upon millions of sheep are so wrong about this. Let's read on here. No one's freedom of speech has been ended by technocrats. Only individuals who are using companies' product, which is not protected speech. These people don't get it. That these services have become essential to communication in the public sphere. And by their nature, these services are prone to becoming the only service available, to becoming a monopoly. And they are monopolies. Each one of the big services are the only player in their space, in their business space. Rex Murphy will talk about this. Reading from the top. Alan, I think you're amazing, but this is not an attack on the First Amendment. I cannot fathom how conservatives can be arguing to force private companies to do what they want. It's been done in the past. We had the breakup of AT&T for being a monopoly too, or Bell in the US. I can't remember which one it was. Conservatives are supposed to champion private industry, not compel them to act in a certain way. But conservatives are also supposed to break up monopolies. They're also supposed to combat tyranny and protect freedoms of speech, freedoms for individuals. And this is exactly a freedom of speech. Read this one. It is of grave concern that the leader of the free world is using social platforms to incite violence and rioting for the purposes of overturning a fair election in a democratic society. Well, that's specifically the bone of contention. First of all, Trump did not incite rioting. The Democrats have been inciting rioting for a year up to this election. They've been openly encouraging people to be violent. And this was not a fair election. This was a theft. This was election fraud. The biggest election fraud in human history. And it succeeded. And its consequence will be one world government for the entire world and the creation of a work slave class globally. Let's read another one. Wasn't the left that killed a cop on the Capitol the other day? Well, how's that relevant? Like, a cop was killed, that's tragic. But that means suspend the First Amendment, allow the unpersoning and the elimination of freedom of speech because one cop was killed? Well, maybe the left went out and killed that cop to maybe it was a lefty specifically ordered to do this in order to justify elimination of freedom of speech. Let's read another one. This Christine, who considers herself to be an intellectual giant with her laughy emoticons. My 14-year-old son also said I'm denying her rights by denying her social media. Y'all be all right. Y'all be all right there, Christina. And I'm going to say it. Just stop supporting violence and businesses will stop kicking y'all to the curb. Y'all. Look, it's the left that have been pushing violence for a year. The right are starting to get fed up with it and start to try and push back. But these are the people who support Biden, the lefties who want their freedoms eliminated. They are celebrating censorship. Read another one. It's of grave concern to me that private business owners in the country are going to be forced by the government to follow the government policies, police policies, in their own private businesses. The government is trying to take over private business decisions. Bad country for a business. You have no idea what's coming, lady. And most of these people celebrating, by the way, folks, let's point this out. Most of the people celebrating the censorship and the unpersoning are women. I would say it's 2/3 to 3/4 female in these comments that are celebrating this. Michael Keller says, thank you again for your donation, Michael. Boko Haram and Al-Qaeda still have their Twitter accounts. Yeah, that's true. There are a lot of true hate mongers, truly spreading terrorist ideas on Twitter, and Twitter is okay with it. And the reason is that there are people in those communities, in those countries, that are among the elite of the world. Some of those people in those kind of countries you referred to will be the partners of people like like Jack Dorsey and Al Bezos. So they're not going to silence them. Let's move on here. Here's another one. Here's a male. I haven't just said all that women's stuff, but for the 100th time, conservatives, this is not a First Amendment issue. Internet companies are not our government. Is the point that maybe government should be the one running the internet? No, these people just don't get it. It doesn't matter whether they're private companies anymore. They are the public square now, and they're not just the public square in your community. They're the public square in the world, in the entire world. Being shut off of the social media platforms is a form of unpersoning, unprecedented. You are preventing that person from participating in the public conversation in the world. That is a monopoly. That is incredible power, and that is what Rex Murphy is going to be talking about very shortly when we go over his article. Dave Rubin says, and how many Antifa accounts? Let's read the first part here that he responded to. Twitter says it has suspended 70,000 plus accounts that were, quote, engaged in sharing harmful QAnon associated content. QAnon content is not harmful. These people spreading this content are just spreading some ideas and claims about a mysterious organization that they believe exists out there. Big deal. How is it harmful? They never say that. So Dave Rubin responds, how many Antifa accounts? Not to be a stickler for the rules, but they have been burning down cities for a couple of years while being instigated by Democrat politicians and cheered on by the mainstream media. This is absolutely true. There is a completely one-sided focus on this deplatforming stuff, folks. And it is everybody that is against their totalitarian rule of the lefties. Let's read this. When someone tries to cancel you by going after your source of income, they are trying to kill you. That's right. They want you to be homeless and to starve. There's no other explanation about this from this. And what joins these all together, because banks are not social media, yet they're getting into the deplatforming business. They are all, what joins all these ideas together is that they're all controlled by these very same elites. Let's read on. Greg Price says, if Congress actually took inciting violence seriously, they would have censored Maxine Waters a long time ago. That is right. Maxine Waters actually encouraged Democrats to go out and harass Republicans in restaurants, in public square, and give them no place in the culture whatsoever. Maxine Waters, and not a word said about her. This fellow says, with everything that's going on now, did the left just admit they were wrong about the Christian cake baker from Colorado? It's a private company. They can do what they want. It's a point. Rand Paul says, let's read the bottom part first, down here. With no explanation other than repeatedly going against our community standards, Facebook has blocked me from managing my page. Never have we received notice. Facebook now considers, reading at the top, advocating for liberty to be sedition. Where will it end? I think you know where I think it's going to end, folks. Everything is pushing in the direction of a one world government, wealth transfer to the new investments of the elite in third world countries to more than double their wealth once again, and the creation of a work slave class for everybody else in the world. That's where it ends. Reading from the top. If elected Republicans do not stand up against the mass canceling happening to the tens of thousands of peaceful protesters on January 6th, it really will be the end of the party. That's a good point. And Jack Napier says, you need perspective. Here's the perspective. The most visible and vocal Republican in the country just tried to an unsuccessful coup that resulted in deaths. Just some food for thought. This is how stupid these people are. They actually believe the mainstream media's promoting of that incident at the Capitol as to be instigated by Trump. No. To be honest, I think it was a leftist black false flag operation, and it's being used for that very reason. Now here's how stupid the left get. Read this woman Arabella Stevenson's tweet here. Free speech is what caused the insurrection. It's what caused Nazi Germany. These people are so indoctrinated into the Marxist leftist weird way of thinking that they actually want their freedom of speech taken away. She actually believes that it is freedom of speech that caused this, what they're calling, it wasn't an insurrection on the Capitol, but it caused the incident at the Capitol. No, it didn't. Jordan Peterson points out regularly, I think, that speech is what prevents us, or one of the things that holds violence back. When people can express themselves freely, they're not apt to act in violence. Freedom of speech is an outlet valve that diffuses violence. What's coming in our culture in the West is terrible, and crushing freedom of speech will make it worse. But this is the thinking of the people on the street out there. This is a result of 40 years of dumbing down of the education system under the control of feminists and Marxists. They're putting out people on the street that believe this kind of absolute nonsense. Let's read on. Mindy Robinson says, they got me. I'm locked out of my Facebook page of 223,000 patriots for, quote, daring to post videos of first-hand accounts of what happened at the Capitol. There are videos out there which go against the leftist narrative, and they want them crushed, like they want a lot of our history crushed. The cops let most people in, and now they're going after everyone as terrorists. What a setup. I think that's right. Here, FX Hedge says, Deutsche Bank, which has been Trump's primary lender for decades, has decided not to do business with Trump or his businesses in the future. Think about what this means, folks. Here is Trump, one very wealthy person, a lot of influence, but the elite have so much influence that they have convinced this particular bank to unplatform Trump, the sitting president of the U.S. You folks, the signs here are so unmistakably clear of what the future these lefties have for the world, their plan. They're not hiding it, and they're implementing it at a blazingly fast rate. Biden is not even in office yet, and all of this is like they were already waiting for the go-ahead to push the button to end all this stuff. This must have been prepared all in advance to happen at this speed throughout the Western culture. Mindy Robinson says, read from the top with me, United Airlines kicked every single passenger off the plane because they were singing the national anthem. This comes right after American Airlines threatened to land the plane I was on for a 10-second USA chant. 10 seconds. It's insane. I mean, I'm not sure what these incidents really mean, but they are disturbing that they happen today. I don't think any of these incidents would have happened a couple of years ago. Excuse me. And here from Edward Brzezinski. Well, you already know, because we Poles know very well what communism is, because it has censored, enslaved, and murdered us for 50 years. And now you American patriots have started to experience the same. Don't give up. They will finish you off. This is it. American public, I don't know why, but they've been taken over by the leftist mental illness, and they want to go down the same roads that past people have suffered in before, and they want to suffer that same fate. And they will. You will be seeing that same suffered fate in the U.S. Jordan Peterson says here, and this is from this video that Biden put out. Biden, you've probably seen this video. Biden says that they're going to prioritize help for COVID-19 lockdown damage towards, and he listed off a whole group of minorities, ethnic minorities and women. But basically, Jordan Peterson says here, why insist upon racial and ethnic distinctions? I'm a little disappointed in Jordan Peterson. He went halfway with his tweet. They also said males. And if you listen to Biden's list of people who deserve government help, Biden listed all the different categories out. The reason they lift all these different categories out, folks, is because they can't say nothing for white men. They can't come out and say, look, we're going to help all U.S. citizens who are not white males. They can't come out and say that, because then they'll be open to a little bit of criticism. But they instead of saying, we don't care about white males, you guys just don't deserve any help. I don't care if your business was destroyed, if you're living on the street and you're dying of some treatable illness. We're not helping you because you're a white male. They can't say that. But they can say we're going to help black people, women, minorities, Spanish people, Hispanic people, Oriental people. They can go through all that list and say, isn't it great that we're helping all these categories of people? That's how they're selling it. And this started in 1984 with affirmative action. And I remember these policies coming out. And at that time, they weren't so beat around the bush about it. Because in Canada, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms specifically does the same thing what Biden did here. It lists out all the categories of human beings that live in Canada. Everybody is included in their explicit categories, except white males. White males are the only category that are not protected by the Charter of Rights and Freedoms in Canada. Think about what that really means. And it is legal to this day, since the Charter of Rights in 1982, written by Pierre Trudeau, our current tiny tyrant Trudeau's father. The Charter of Rights and Freedoms in Canada makes it legal for companies and governments to discriminate against white men. And it is being done. I've seen specific job requirements that say in one form or another, white males need not apply. Specifically, those words. So, Biden is going down the same road. He is saying they will, I think in this case they're saying they will prioritize. But you know darn well that if you put in an application for aid from the U.S. government today as a white male, you're not going to get any aid. You'll be laughed right out of the office. This is racism. And what disappoints me here is that I am absolutely certain that Jordan Peterson saw this, but he did not want to say that it's also sexist. And that when you take all of these together, they are saying, and here's my tweet about this, I retweeted this, not just racial and ethnic, but gender distinctions as well. Why beat around the bush? Taken together, the message is very specific. White men need not apply. This is today's racism and sexism, folks. Everywhere in the Western world, we're seeing this kind of sentiment rising and becoming legitimized by leaders. White men need not apply. This is the world we live in. And here we have, I'm going to just see how much more we've got here. I'm going to have to go a little bit faster. Let me help him rephrase it. It sounds more inclusive. We will ensure everyone has equal access to resources needed to open and rebuild. See how easy it is to be inclusive? This was a response to Peterson's tweet. No, it doesn't say we will ensure everyone has equal access to resources needed to reopen and rebuild. These kinds of people, and these are the most common people in our culture. They don't even see that white males were explicitly excluded from the categories listed by Biden. Let's read on. This is an important, and this is the subject of today's stream, and this is in the Business Standard, and this was written in June 18th, 2020. Big Tech is watching you. And this was written, again, more than 6 months ago. They knew. This is kind of prescient, but look what's happening today. It's even order of magnitude worse than it was 6 months ago. Ms. Farrar looks at how Big Tech has taken over our lives and the manipulative and malign aspects of its influence on society. Ironically, the title is borrowed from Google's original mission statement. Let's read this here. This is a book review. And the book, I think, is named Big Tech is Watching You. I might just buy that book myself. I'm interested in it. So let's have a look at what... Why is it not going forward now? Crap. I'm going to have to shut this down here. Bear with me a second. My screen over here is not working properly for some reason. I have to get it moving again. Okay, here we go. Google, this is 2.5 years ago, folks. This is very significant. 2.5 years ago, Google removed its "Don't be evil." That was like their theme at Google. And corporate Google, from the beginning, for God knows 15 years or 20 years, Google explicitly said in corporate, "Don't be evil." They removed the clause from its code of conduct 2.5 years ago. And you know why? I think we know why now. That the leadership at Google knew darn well that this might be a source of criticism in the public forum for pointing out how hypocritical they are. That's why they removed it, because they knew darn well that their plans were purely evil. Google knew that their future plans were purely evil, and in order to try and minimize or eliminate the public pointing out their hypocrisy with their own code of conduct of "Don't be evil," they eliminated it from their code of conduct. Yes, that is very specific. In some ways, you're right, Wikipedia snippet, is they just removed the word "don't." This is, I mean, you can't make this stuff up. The company 2.5 years ago writes, it removes "Don't be evil." I mean, if you are really a legitimately organization seeking good in the world, why would you feel the need to remove a statement so kind of innocuous, really, of "Don't be evil" from your code of conduct? There's only one reason. They don't want people to point out that they're being evil by using hypocrisy as a way to point out that they are being evil. Let's read this from that article. Back to the article again. Big Tech owns us all in a way that no industry has ever owned populations at large. There is an undeniable upside. The 21st century individual has access to unimaginable information and an unparalleled ability to connect distantly with people and places. That was the bait. It's true. These big tech services are amazing for our lives. But it was a bait and switch. Big tech provided us all these amazing applications and services for free. But then you get addicted to them. It becomes very hard now to get unaddicted to their services. They provide everything. Google Maps gives you GPS on your phone and more. The Google Keep and Calendar and Gmail and your backup and sync to synchronize your files and back them up. The Google Photos, Android operating systems. The list is nearly infinite. And they're good products. But we're addicted to them. We're in their ecosystem. Let's read on here. The downside is that it owns us, heart, soul, and wallet. It leverages our data for profit. It flags routines 24/7. It can be deployed for targeted assassinations. It can maintain and update social credit scores that a totalitarian government uses to keep citizens tractable. It can place activists under relentless surveillance. And it can cancel you. Social media has become the public square in the most meaningful way possible globally. And by our addiction to it and their monopoly of it, they can completely cancel you from the world. And banks can cancel you from your banks. Social media cancels you. You're done. Let's read on. This book sounds like it might be well worth reading. It can target and manipulate political choices, as we saw in the 2016. The 2016 election swung 10 million votes in the U.S. to Hillary Clinton. Trump still won. As easily as consumer choices, which represents an unprecedented, nearly bloodless threat to democracy. This book came out 6 or 8 months ago. All right. And look at how prescient it is. A nearly bloodless threat to democracy. Big tech played a huge role in stealing that election. Let's read onwards here. Reading from the top. Like many others, Ms. Rohar sounds a warning about the inability of political systems to cope with this threat. She also looks at the more dubious economic outcome of big tech. Big tech has enabled extreme disparities in income and wealth generation, with the rich getting richer, the poor getting poorer, and the middle class hollowed out. Boy, if they ever true about that. But here, this part here, I'll take a little bone of contention with this inability of political systems to cope. I think she means the system itself, but the Democrat response is that the Democrat is in bed with big tech. The Democrat Party is the government, the oversight arm of big tech today. So big tech now controls the U.S. government. Think about that. The U.S. government is controlled by big tech today. Reading from the top. We have learned the hard way that big tech creates natural monopolies. There's only one Facebook, one Google, one Twitter, one Amazon. This is very, very important. This woman has a lot of insight. I think it's probably worth reading the entire book. For the little snippets I see here, the insight is important. I mean, it's not like other people haven't said these things, but to put the whole thing together in a book to explain the dangers of big tech controlling our world is important. Network effects ensure there will be no competition, and that's what we're seeing today. We're seeing some migration to Gab and to Minds. I have accounts on those, as well as Parler. But big tech's influence is huge, especially now that it controls the U.S. government. Because controlling the U.S. government can whip up some kind of hysterical fear and then order the physical plugs removed from the servers of places like Gab and Parler and Minds. Don't put it past them, folks. Big tech controls the governments of the world. They want a one world government. They want absolute power. They've already showed they will eliminate Parler's existence. They've taken action against Gab. If they have to, they will try to lobby the complicit, the right on board Biden-Harris government to trump up some charges, probably hate speech. You know, they're promoting hate speech. And then they will send the police over to shut down the servers of places like Gab and Minds, the competitors to Facebook and Twitter and so on. Those organizations want a monopoly. And I guarantee you that the Biden Harris administration will not break up those monopolies. They will take no action against Google. Trump might have. These ones won't. They will take no action against Twitter. They will take no action against Facebook as monopolies in the world. Zero. You can guarantee it because they are on board. Let's read on here. Where these specific corporations have been prevented from operating, there is only one Alibaba, one Weibo, one Tencent. These are comparative organizations in parts of the world that Facebook and Google and Twitter don't operate. But still, those organizations are huge, and they also have a monopoly. So what they're saying here, what she's saying is that big tech creates natural monopolies. It does. And we now have a government that is not going to take any action against any monopolies. So we're coming up on, we're over an hour and a half here, and I'm going to get straight to the very important content written in a national post in Canada, Canada of all places. One of the countries in the Western world with the most tyrannical leadership, a leadership under Trudeau's Liberals, who owns almost all of the mainstream media in Canada, possibly all of it. I think the National Post is one of the few that is not totally controlled and funded by Trudeau's Liberal government. The CBC is the biggest known one, but the Toronto Star and all kinds of other once private and proud journalist organizations have all taken funding now from the Liberal Party of Canada's, I think it's $600 million funding fund for the media. CBC gets over $1 billion, or maybe it's $2 billion a year from the Liberal Party of Canada. The reason I say the Liberal Party of Canada and not the government part of Canada is because the Conservatives for decades have tried to defund the CBC. But Canadians don't want that. Canadians want the government to fund their own propaganda machine, the CBC. And the CBC, we've seen it many times in the past, protect the Liberal Party and hypercritical the Conservative Party. So Canada has almost entirely state-owned media in no uncertain terms. But the National Post is one of the few that sits outside of that, as does Rebel News. This Rex Murphy wrote 2 days ago, and it's a brilliant article. I'm going to go over a good part of it, but I suggest that you read it in its entirety. Rex Murphy is a unique way of explaining things, and he gets to the crux of the problems of his topics he takes on. Rex Murphy says, don't even try to pretend there's such a thing as free speech anymore. And I'll tell you, Rex Murphy is not one to exaggerate. This is absolutely true. Don't even try to pretend there's such a thing as free speech anymore. Let's read the subtitle. Dorsey and his plutocratic allies may have the right to strip mine all opposing views from their platforms, but they should not simultaneously be allowed to preach that they are speaking truth to power. Published 2 days ago. Let's read on. Reading from the top. However, he surely does have the manner of a king, purely in his own way, purely on his own say, so he cancelled the account of the President of the United States just days before a new one is to be sworn in. Jack, as most Twitterers refer to him, has had 4 years to do this. 4 years. But he waited till the last moment, using the attack on the Capitol as his excuse, when the backlash would be minimal, with his many anti-Trump confreres ready to toast him at the next Silicon Valley Jamboree, and of course so many in the madly partisan anti-Trump press ready to dish out screeds telling him how brave and wise he is. These are the cabal of tyrants that are now in control of our entire culture. Let's read on from what Rex Murphy says here. Read with me from the top. But for nonce, we may take Trump out of the equation, for Mr. Jack has hit the off button on a myriad of accounts, big and small, in the past, and if reports over the weekend are anything to go by, has been having a purgative go on Twitter users. Nor is Twitter alone in his early January purge. Facebook jumped on the Trump ban. Google and Apple, the other two empires of the internet world, moved to ban the new alternative site to Twitter called Parler from their various applications. I think Gab has also been removed. Such a concert of censorship, all conducted within hours or days of each other by a quartet of the most influential corporations in the entire planet, run by the richest, most powerful men of our time. Please do not call it collusion. No, can't be collusion. It's just all a coincidence. Rex Murphy, you always hit the nail on the head. I toast Rex Murphy. I encourage everybody to follow Rex everywhere he publishes. Let's read on what more Rex has to say. And conducted, not incidentally, during these anxious days of shutdown and COVID, it is a vulnerable time for very many, and for some others, a time of shifty opportunism for the wealthy and those in power. The line goes, since these are private companies, he's talking about the response to people like those tweets who are celebrating the shutdowns of accounts and unpersoning of people. Let's read from the top again. That line goes, since these are private companies, they can ban whom they like. They are not government, and the band can find other venues, except Parler, of course. Save that for the junior high debate class and CNN panels. I love the way Rex sticks a needle to CNN there, and to these people who claim that it's a private company and they're not shutting down freedom of speech. Of course they're shutting down freedom of speech. It is the platform everybody in the world congregates at. It is the public square. When you ban somebody from the public square, you're banning them from contributing to the conversation. Let's read on what Rex has to say here. Dorsey and his plutocratic allies may have the, quote, right to strip mine all opposing views from their, but they should not sign. Oh, I already read that. I must have double captured that. Well, it's probably worth reading over again. They should not simultaneously be allowed to preach that they are open and empowering and speaking truth to power. Most importantly, to deny that they are agents and activists in the great political struggle of our times. They are agents and activists. Their goal is the one world government in which they will be the leaders, the emperors of the world. Read for the top. As for being friends of free speech, that's a line that not even the revolting peasants are going to buy. Revolting by, I mean revolutionary peasants, he means here. They are players of the greatest reach and influence in all the critical debates of our day. They should never be allowed the ability to determine what is permissible to say and what is not, to determine who shall speak and who shall not, or what is acceptable and what is not. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. And yet they do, even while standing to gain absolute power of the world by doing so. The coup is incredible. Things giving me a problem again. And this, I think, is the last quote for this. No, wait a second. That's not even... Bear with me a sec. My thing's not moving forward again. And what is not. Nope, that is the last of what I had to share with you today, folks. As you know, I'm pessimistic from the sense of, I'm pessimistic because I think that we're facing the beginnings of the weirdest and hardest time for the normal people of the world. You and me, we're being pushed into being a working slave class. I think the powers that are rolling forward now are all but unstoppable. I'm optimistic in the sense that if you see and understand what's happening in front of your eyes, you can organize a reasonable life for yourself. You cannot prepare for something you cannot see or are not willing to see. So we need to look this situation straight in the eye, identify it for exactly what it is, and prepare accordingly. Brainstorm, share your ideas. Because some people may have some ideas on how to survive and thrive through this, and the important things that need to be done. One of the important things I think needs to be done is that an archive of the true history of what's going on in our day needs to be taken and saved offline, because these companies are so massively powerful, and they've already started to erase history according to Orwell's description. They are erasing history as we speak. We need to document the fall of Western society. What we're documenting here is the coming to end of the only period of human history where large numbers of people had freedoms protected and had a reasonable, wealthy standard of living. This is coming to an end. It's being degraded. Our standard of living won't go back to some of the horrible times of history, but it's going down. And the idea of freedom of speech and presumption of innocence is now being erased from our lives. So we need to document this happening. They're going to erase as much of history as they can and they want to make the public believe that this one world government, the elimination of freedom of speech, the elimination of presumption of innocence, and your freedoms to travel in the world and do what you like, they want to make that, they're going to sell it to you as for your safety, as they're doing now, and they're going to erase those people who criticize what's going on. They're going to erase their work. They're going to erase the truth of history. And they're going to try. I think we need to protect those things, because we will rise up again one day. That these kinds of horribly evil, destructive, totalitarian movements, they have a life cycle about them. Eventually, the size and power of it will rot and corrupt to its core, and it will collapse. But that could happen that could take a very long time, which is why I call this the 1,000 years of darkness period that we're entering into. And again, I want to remind you, I don't mean 1,000 years literally. I've used the term 1,000 years because it implies it's going to be a long ride. So, share your ideas with your friends. Share them on public media as you can. Get a Gab account, get a Parley account, get a Minds account. I'm looking into other alternatives as well. I think my days on mainstream services like Facebook and YouTube and Twitter, they're probably numbered. I'm going to keep a presence here as long as I can, but I see that in both of the platforms, YouTube and on Twitter, the account subscribers are bleeding away every week. Every day I lose subscribers, even though Twitter sends me a notice I've gained a dozen subscribers. When I look at, I get a Twitter notice that I say I've gained a dozen subscribers in a day. At any given time, when I go and look at my subscriber count, it's gone down. I don't know if it's automatic, or maybe people are just not in line with what I'm saying. Maybe they don't like to hear the messages that I'm saying. Possibly some people don't like the kind of pessimistic nature of the message. The same thing is happening on YouTube for the last 6 months. We're bleeding 100 to 200 subscribers per week. So it takes a long time to bleed all these subscribers out, but at 100 to 200 a week, I think they're going to accelerate that if it's YouTube doing it. But it may be people just not agreeing with the message, or not liking the message that I put out there. But anyways, it's the message I have. I speak my mind the way I feel it best I can. about the topics I care about. And of course, I can be wrong, but I do believe the most important thing is that I should have the right to speak my mind. And you have the right to tell me I'm wrong if you believe so. So with that, I want to say, folks, as I say at the end of every one of these sessions, thank you for joining me. And don't forget to do something you love today and every single day. If you don't have something you love to do, find something you love to do and do it every day, because it's really good for your mental health, your spiritual health. It's good for your physical health, because this is your life, and no matter what's going on in the world, this is the life you're going to live. So I tell people I practice piano almost daily, not that much, not that good at it, but I enjoy it. It gives me a very great sense of self-expression. And I also love to ride my motorcycle. Motorcycle riding for me is the closest thing to flying. It's a great sense of freedom. I have a cheap Chinese less than $2,000 US motorcycle, but it does everything I want it to do, and the sense of freedom, enjoyment is tremendous. So do something you love to do, and join me again soon on Studio Burley for another Coffee with Steve.